Today is the birthday of actor Anton Walbrook. Like a lot of movie nerds, I'm mostly familiar with his work with The Archers, Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. My favorite Walbrook performance is in The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. Over the course of the film, the character becomes increasingly wary and rueful without losing his sensitivity and compassion. That's a hard thing to communicate and often is only done through a sad glimmer in his eyes or a bemused but pained smile. There's a very famous scene where his character talks about his decision to leave Germany. The sounds of the cars outside fade out, and the camera pushes in for an intimate close up.
My wife was English. She would have loved to come back to England, but it seemed to me that I would be letting down my country in its greatest need, and so she stayed at my side. When in summer 33 we found that we had lost our children to the Nazi party, and I was willing to come, she died. None of my sons came to her funeral. Heil Hitler. And then in January 35, I had to go to Berlin on a mission for my firm. Driving up in my car, I lost my way on the outskirts of the city, and suddenly, the landscape seemed so familiar to me. And slowly I recognized the road, the lake, and a nursing home where I spent some weeks recovering. Almost 40 years ago. I stopped the car and sat still, remembering. And you see, in this very nursing home, sir, I met my wife for the first time. And I met an Englishman who became my greatest friend. And I remember the people at the station in 19, when we prisoners were sent home, cheering us, treating us like friends. The faces of a party of distinguished men round a table who tried their utmost to comfort me when the defeat of my country seemed to me unbearable. And very foolishly, I remembered the English countryside, the gardens, the green lawns, the weedy rivers and the trees she loved so much. And a great desire came over me to come back to my wife's country. And this, sir, is the truth.
And for the space of about 3 minutes, the tempo isn't dictated by cutting, but by Walbrook. It's a monologue, it's an actorly scene, a writerly scene, but it's shot and cut and even sound mixed in such a way to give it emphasis. And when the scene finishes, we go wide again, and the world slowly comes back in to fill the silence. This part was written for Walbrook, and there are some biographical parallels. He had been a popular stage and screen actor in the Weimar era, but fled Germany in the 30s to escape persecution for his Jewish ancestry and homosexuality. Upon arriving in Hollywood, he was suspected of being a spy.
If you were here to work for the enemy, what would you tell me now? Exactly the same.
Leading to boycotts of his films and an air of hostility that lingered until he moved to the UK. Now, Blimp has my favorite Wahlberg performance in an Archer's film. My favorite Archer's film with a Wahlberg performance is The Red Shoes. I know that's basically everyone's favorite Archer's film, but it's just really good, and I'm particularly someone who responds really well to this kind of gorgeous Technicolor artifice. I showed The Red Shoes to a bunch of friends earlier this year, and most of them bounced off of it pretty hard. They particularly had a problem with Wahlberg's performance, which is a lot stagier, a lot more heightened than his work in Colonel Blimp. And of course, it's also less sympathetic. The Red Shoes is basically a horror movie, and Walbrook is the movie's monster, a raging misogynist prone to cruel, vindictive jealousy. He doesn't just want to control his ballerina, he wants her to cease to be a person, to become art, to become his art.
I want to create, to make something big out of something little, to make a great dancer out of you. But first, I must ask you the same question. What do you want from life? To live?
To dance.
All right, go then. Go with him. Be a faithful housewife. The crowd of screaming children and finish with dancing forever.
There's a moment at the end of the film after the ballerina has died. Spoilers, I guess. The ballerina dies. Where he goes out onto the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to tell you that Miss Page is unable to dance tonight, nor indeed any other night. Nevertheless, we've decided to present the Red Shoes. It is the ballet that made her name, whose name she made.
And everyone I've shown it to was like, what is he doing? Why is he talking like that? This is such a weird acting choice. It's so alienating. And there's certainly something to be said about the way the arts of film and film acting have changed in the last 80 years. And even when we try to meet things where they are, there are things that are going to feel hokey, that aren't going to land. And I certainly understand this being one of them. And the filmmakers did not intend people to laugh at it and roll their eyes, so it hasn't aged well. But I also think it is supposed to be weird and alienating. It starts in this very wide shot. We see him head to toe, and this emphasizes the stiffness of his body language. Even as the camera pushes in closer, capturing his agony and guilt is doing so from a lower angle pointing up, so it doesn't feel sympathetic. Intercut with this are stunned, shocked close ups of characters who actually cared about Vicky. It's contrasting their emotional reactions with his performance. And it is a performance, an acting out of grief for public consumption, a little speech complete with a chiasmic turn of phrase. It feels artificial. This isn't shot or edited or acted for sympathy or intimacy, but for revulsion and distance. And maybe this acting choice feels a little silly in 2024. Certainly, the scene in Blimp has aged better. But I think, like that scene, it's an example of a performance working in concert with the other elements of filmmaking to create the intended effect of a talented actor collaborating with his peers. So, what happened with this one is that this morning I found out it was Anton Walbrook's birthday, and I thought, maybe I'll put a little something together, and here we are. As I said elsewhere, the next quote unquote real video essay will be coming in December.